Welcome into the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner. Today, I'm super excited to have Nancy J. Cohen on the show with us. Sorry, we've been fighting some technical gremlins before we got started here, and we couldn't get Nancy's camera and microphone to work together for some reason. So we opted to just have clear audio, and we'll have to have Nancy back on soon where we can see her lovely face while we do the show. Nancy is uh, is an author that has been publishing for, gosh, Nancy, what, 30 years?
30
Um,
some years, right.
30
My
some
first book
years.
came out in 1994.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, this is the 30th year. I was married in 94 and we just had our 30th anniversary. So,
Congratulations.
well, thank you, thank you. Nancy has written romance, romantic sci-fi, and she's probably most well known, at least recently, for cozy mysteries. And Nancy literally wrote the book on writing cozy mysteries, and she wrote the book "Writing the Cozy Mystery," and I have it in paperback and Kindle edition because I'm that obsessive, I guess. The Kindle edition is great for reading when you're laying in bed and you are trying not to wake your wife up with the lamp beside the bed. So that's what the Kindle edition is good for. But since we have kicked off our 60-day write a novel in 60-day challenge, and I am writing a cozy mystery this year, and I've been doing everything I could to learn as much about the genre and to get into it. And I thought Nancy J. Cohen would be the person to have on the show and pick her brain about all things cozy mysteries. Welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thanks so much. I
I'm
appreciate
I'm
you having me.
Well, I'm super excited to have you. Nancy, I love to start a conversation with a fun question to kind of set the tone. And one question that I love to ask people is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Well, I would go back to grade school where I wrote stories and poems and a Shakespearean type play. So I just enjoyed reading so much that I wanted to tell my own stories.
Gotcha. Um, do you you first started writing sci-fi? Is that right?
Science fiction romance, that's
Okay.
correct.
What
Yeah,
was it
because I
about?
loved reading romance and I was a Star Trek fan, so I kind of combined the two.
Love it.
And I still enjoy the genre.
I grew up watching science fiction, like the original Star Trek, with my mom, who was a big science fiction fan, and I love some of the earlier kind of golden era of sci-fi. It's some of my favorite genres to read. What was it about science fiction, and then specifically science fiction romance that piqued your interest?
Well, you can create any kind of world that you want. So there are no limits. There's not a whole lot of genre restrictions except for the typical romance ones. Boy meets
Right.
girl, boy and girl don't get along, they fall in love and they end up happily together. But you could put them on different worlds and different situations, and your imagination is the limit. They're it's not as restricted, say, as a mystery genre,
Right.
where everything has to be based in reality and logic.
Yeah. And you say restrictive, but do you find mysteries restrictive, putting something in the real world, having believable scenarios? And does that kind of spark creativity a little more because you do have the confines of having to keep something believable?
Well, it's true. A mystery follows a sense of logic, and what follows must be plausible.
Right.
You have, for example, the too stupid to live moment where the heroine or the hero goes into the dark cellar where they know the killer might be. And that's implausible. Uh, there's a certain fantasy element with cozy mysteries too, because the
Right.
sleuth runs into so many dead bodies, but everything turns out okay at the end. And a certain structure is expected. So there's restrictions in those genre expectations.
That's kind of the Jessica Fletcher conundrum, isn't it? That someone this nice shouldn't be stepping over bodies every every episode.
Yeah, I mean, you have to suspend disbelief in that regard because there is
Yeah.
going to be a body in every story, and the
Right.
sleuth is going to solve it before the police. And that is part of the mystery genre.
Yeah. So why did you decide to switch genres from sci-fi to mystery?
As we know in publishing, different genres are cyclical,
Sure.
and the futuristic romance genre was going down when my agent said, "Why don't you write a straight mystery series?" Because my last book, actually, my last futuristic romance that I had written, taught me how to write a murder mystery because there was
Yeah.
a incident that happened, a small group of suspects, most of whom knew each other, and all of whom had a motive, which is how you plot a cozy mystery. And so I was thinking I would like this, but what to do that hasn't been done before. And one day I was getting a perm in a hair salon when I saw other women looking around, waiting for their hair to process. And I thought, we should kill off one of these ladies. And that's how I came up with my hairdresser, Sleuth. A hair salon's a perfect place for a mystery series because you overhear gossip. You can go do wedding parties in a hotel. You don't have to be stuck in the salon all the time. And you have to be a good listener, which is a quality we want in a amateur sleuth.
Right. Um, for folks who may not quite understand some of the subgenre distinctions, whereas thrillers um, and some of the more hard boiled mystery might include some darker elements. The cozy mystery tends to lean to the lighthearted side. It doesn't mean that big things don't happen in the stories, but, how would you distinguish between a cozy mystery and something, like a Harry Bosch, traditional detective?
It is a light-hearted tone. So that's the first thing. There's often cutesy covers, titles with puns, and an amateur sleuth who's a good listener, a good conversationalist, has a way with people, more so she can find out information that the police can't. It's stories based on relationships, not police procedure or forensic details. So it's all about interviewing people, using your intuition, and elimination process for the killer.
Gotcha. When you start, like you talked about being in the salon and you start playing the what if game, which is a lot of times how I kind of begin the brainstorming process for a new book, come up with a character and then just start playing the what if game. Um, when you begin a new book, how do you start that process of determining what's going to happen and to whom, and then casting all of your characters that are going to be in the book? Where does that usually start for you?
For me, it starts with the victim. I determine who the victim is going to be, and then all of the friends and associates of that person who might have a motive. So, for example, in Star Tangled Murder, which is my latest title, the
Right.
story takes place at a living history village in South Florida. The town marshal is murdered during 4th of July weekend. So, all of the villagers, the actors playing parts, become the suspects, which is ideal for a cozy mystery because you have a built in cast. And I
Right.
call this the setting within the setting. The overall setting is South Florida. It's Marla's beauty business, but within that is this microcosm of the history village and the people in it. So it's ideal if you can recreate that with a different setting
Right.
each book.
Right. And that's one of the hallmarks of the cozy mystery is that the setting almost becomes a character in a way. You are from South Florida, from what I understand. Is that why you chose this setting? What is Are there certain aspects of that particular setting that lend itself well to these types of stories?
Yeah, well, the heat and the storms add some tension, like we have right now preparing for a hurricane. But it's a lot of, there are some upscale neighborhoods with manicured lawns, and you wonder what secrets people harbor behind their beautiful houses. And
Mm,
that's the atmosphere that I wanted to challenge in my stories. So you want to bring in the flavor of your setting, however possible, whether it's through traditions, festivals, foods, whatever is unique to that area. And that's kind of fun to do
yeah.
that too.
South Florida could be uh, fairly populous, depending on the time of year, especially. How do you maintain that small community feeling in a place that has so much tourism and a lot of traffic?
Marla's hair salon is located in fictional Palm Haven, which is just west of Fort Lauderdale. So it is its own small city in itself, which is
Yeah,
actually Plantation, where I used to live. So it's a small community feeling that you get from living there. And then Marla can interview suspects in various parts of Florida. She doesn't always have to stay there the entire book. I can go to my favorite tourist haunts, for example, and have Marla interview a suspect there so I can highlight that place. And Florida has so much diverse ecology, um, environmental causes. There's such diversity here that it's really never ending source of information.
sure. When you first switched genres and went to the mystery, genre, were you surprised? Well, first off, how did you start kind of doing market research or, really feeling out kind of where this genre was, what the readership was like? Did you was there a lot of groundwork that you had to do before getting in, or did you just say, I love a mystery, let me just write one?
I read a lot of them, the amateur sleuth stories, and I got started reading them with Jill Churchill, who had punny titles, and I just enjoyed the humor involved and the romantic subplots. So I would read a lot of them and then plotted out my own story, getting feedback from different agents that I submitted to and got rejected by until I finally took heart to their suggestions and wrote the entire book. And then it sold through my agent to Kensington Publishing.
How have you seen, the publishing change, over these last,
Oh,
couple of decades? Yeah, because cozy mysteries are really big in the indie publishing space, but, I believe there are some smaller presses that are really specializing there as well. Have you seen the Kindle revolution really change, how this genre is approached?
there are avid fans out there for the cozy mystery genre. And some independent authors have done extremely well, putting their books on Kindle Unlimited, for
Mhm.
example, and having multiple series. But as you
Right.
said, there are small press and places like Kensington that still publish these stories. So you have a choice of either going traditional or going indie from the start. I obviously started out traditionally published and then moved over to indie, which I'm very happy to have made that decision.
Yeah. Were there big challenges when you became the publisher, so to speak? When you leave the publishing houses and then take on all of the aspects of writing and publishing?
Oh, sure. Yeah, because you have to do a lot more of the work and
Yeah,
put your money out there up front. But there are ways to do it economically so you don't break the bank. And that includes marketing. There's a lot of things that you can do that don't cost a whole lot. And yes, you're in charge, but you can design, have a, or hire people to design your cover, to do the formatting. to write your book blurbs. So whatever you're not comfortable doing, you can hire out, which I do for the cover designer, the formatter, blurb writer. So I work with a team to do that aspect for me.
When you start thinking about a new book, Nancy, do you start thinking about a character first? Do you come up with a plot element? Like how do you start brainstorming the mystery process for a new book?
Well, if it's a Marla book, my hairstylist sleuth, I know the recurrent characters already. So it's a matter of, again, the victim and the suspects. Even if I were doing a new one, and right now I'm working on a different heroine story, a different setting. So
Mhm.
first you look at your setting, you look at your sleuth, how the sleuth fits into the setting if you're starting from scratch. And then who's the victim? What's the personal connection to the sleuth? Because you want to give her a personal reason to solve the crime. And who stands to gain from this person's death? So you have a list of the friends and associates, and then you assign each one a motive or a secret. The secret can be a good secret, like they're paying money to their aunt in assisted living. But the reader doesn't know that. The reader only sees that there's these regular payments going out. So you might think blackmail. So
Right.
every suspect has a secret and or a motive. And I do all that before I actually start writing the book. So I need to know where my sleuth fits in and who the characters are. And then there's the victim, the crime, and you proceed in a logical manner from the crime.
So it goes, you start with the crime and then branch out from there. Do y- do you ever finish a book and think, the puzzles just aren't what I want them to be? Like um, how do you think of the puzzle aspect of the book and the red herrings and giving the reader enough? I heard someone say one time when you read a mystery, at the end of it, you want the reader to say, "Oh, I should have guessed that. I could have guessed that, but I didn't." Do you at the end of the book, do you look back over and think, how do you survey the story to see if you have given the reader enough, but trick them enough that they don't get it on first blush?
Well, workshops I attended said you need 3 clues leading to the killer. So, looking backwards, what can those clues be that will give that aha moment to the reader later? And then you plant them in so they're unobtrusive. You might drop in a clue, but immediately present something else that seems more important, or you hide it in plain view. So you want to drop your clues in, but trick the reader into not seeing them for what they are. And red herrings could be the person with the strongest motive. In fact, maybe you thought this would be the killer and then decided that's too obvious. Let's make him the red herring. And at some point, they kind of develop on their own, and you get more insights and story magic that tells you which way to go.
Yeah. When you talk to new writers, I think tropes are one of the most misunderstood elements of storycraft. And you start talking about tropes that are needed for a particular genre, and that tends to scare people away. They think, well, you're going to tell the same kind of story over and over again. And in a way, yes, there are certain story elements that show up over and over again because those are the things that define the genre. But how do you hit the tropes so that you satisfy readers while also keeping the story fresh and doing something new with each book?
Well, the tropes are going to be the same, like the small town setting.
Sure.
But the characters are what makes things fresh because your characters are going to evolve and change. They're going to have new relationships. They're going to have changed relationships. New people might come in, some people might go out, and that's what keeps the readers coming back is the personal strings that they follow for the sleuth. So
Right.
yes, the tropes are there because readers expect them, but how it all happens with these characters is what's different.
Right. And it really comes down to characters, doesn't it? Especially in cozy mysteries, this is a very character-driven genre.
Right. We want the reader to like our sleuths and to feel like the recurrent cast are their friends. So each time they read one of your books, they kind of know what to expect. There'll be a mystery, but they want to find out what's happened to your main characters.
Right. Right. Let's talk for a moment about the book "Writing the Cozy Mystery," that we talked about a minute ago. What was the motivation for writing this book to begin with? That is an extremely popular book right now. If you're interested in writing cozy mysteries, this is like I say, Nancy literally wrote the book on it. What was the motivation for starting this and for kind of documenting the things that you had figured out for the genre?
There was nothing, absolutely nothing on the market at that time. No references for cozy mystery writers. We were kind of relegated down on the respect list in terms of the mystery genre. A lot of these books are written by women, allegedly for women, like the romance genre. And so the cozy mystery writers were the unrecognized heroines of their own stories in a way. And I
Yeah.
wanted to bring it recognition plus provide guidelines, which weren't out there at the time. And I'm just really glad that it's been helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah. What do you think about, when people say stuff like, that cozy mystery is a women's genre, uh, because I know plenty of men, who love to read cozy mysteries. I know quite a few men who write cozy mysteries. W w why do you think that we get this kind of territorial, nature about genres?
I think because cozies are relationship based, they deal with emotions and intuition more so than action thrillers or hard boiled mysteries that focus on the crime details. These are your average neighborhood people that we're having conversations with
Yeah.
and how they relate to each other. So women are more attuned that way, I think. Although there are a lot of cozy male writers out there now, a lot more, and they're just as fine in the genre, and those are fun, great fun stories too.
Yeah. Sure.
As long as no matter who it is, they stick to the genre conventions that readers expect.
Yeah. Yeah. Your cast obviously changes from book to book because you're adding characters. You've got new victims, you've got new perpetrators throughout the series, but there's a core cast of characters. I would imagine that have followed your stories as you've created them. And to me, that's one of the most fun aspects of cozy mystery is kind of building this cast of characters, populating this little town, this community, and getting to, see character arcs, see character change, growth in the community. Um, that's a fun aspect for me. How do you think about that?
Yeah, Marla's recurrent cast includes her mother, her best friend, her love interest, the salon people that she works with, and some of her cousins. And some will appear more in one book than in another. Marla's mother, for example, is featured in Styled for Murder. She's doing a renovation to her home and finds a dead body in her shower. So
Mm,
that's more of a focus on her. Um, in another book, Marla's friend Tally is the focus when she and her husband are in an accident that proves to be not an accident at all. So the characters can mix and match in terms of how much in the forefront they are for each story.
gotcha.
You need to create this in your first book. That's why the first book in the series is so important, because you're laying the groundwork with the recurrent
Right.
cast, with the setting, and with the sleuth. Each book will have different suspects, but the characters that go from book to book, that's where you need to set them sort of in stone, and they need to be people you like in or don't like in that first book.
Gotcha. Do you have a series Bible that you create and to track all the changes or to track the so that you um uh have consistency from book to book? How do you manage this big world that you have created?
The hardest thing for me are the timelines. Who was born when their birthday is, so I know how old for each book they are, what year it takes place, what season. Very important to keep track of all that, so you don't lose the thread somewhere along the way. But
Right.
I didn't start out doing that because I sold 3 books to Kensington initially, and then it was 2 books per contract, and you never knew if your contract would be renewed or not.
Mm,
So, at that time, and we didn't really talk about series Bibles back then, so I got into it a bit later. Now, on this new story I'm working on, that could be book 1 for a new series, and that's probably why it's taken me longer than most of my other books to get done, because it's so important to get
right.
all that right.
You're literally building the world in that book
Mhm.
1, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
What what's the planning process like for a new, and is it different in the first book of a new series versus book 9 in an existing series? Like, when you start laying out your plan for the new book, how detailed is that?
For me, it's a lot harder than just jumping into a series book where I know the characters already.
Yeah,
I think other writers maybe do it a lot easier than I do, especially if they write multiple series. But for me, getting to know these characters is important, and I want to do it right, because I'll be living with these characters again if I continue the
sure.
series. And I need to get their names right, who they are, what their interests are. So the characterization's harder than the plot. The mystery plot isn't that hard for me to do. It's figuring out the characters.
What makes a protagonist in a cozy mystery series that readers really latch onto? Because one of the hallmarks of cozy mystery is that we've got an amateur sleuth, someone who is not a police detective or whatever. We've got a hairdresser, or we've got someone who works in a cookie shop, or whatever their profession is. But the readers really latch on to these protagonists. What is it that makes a lovable, likable character that readers want to go through a ten book series with?
I think somebody who's a good friend, who cares about people, who cares about her loved ones. If she has a pet, that's even better. Pets are very popular in cozy mysteries. Um, she's a caring person who listens to people and isn't going to let go. If she thinks justice is required, she will not let go until that is achieved. So she is obstinate in that way, might be assertive, more so than certainly I would be. If I saw a body, I'd probably run in the other direction. But
Right.
the sleuth's going to find out what's going on and get justice for the victim.
One thing I've noticed in the cozy mystery genre is that readers love to latch onto a series and follow it through, but there seems to be a really interesting relationship that develops between the cozy mystery author and the readership. What has it been like for you getting to know your readers and staying connected with them through all of the creation of your various series?
I love hearing from readers. And we mostly communicate on Facebook. So Facebook's very important to me. how we connect. And I try to make personal posts more than book posts so that they can see who I am as a person. And when somebody makes a comment about my book or says, when's the next one coming out? To me, that's my whole incentive for writing another book because the readers want it. And what could be more satisfying to a writer than readers who want to peruse your work?
Right, right. Nancy, you said that you're working on a new series, but Star Tangled Murder is your most recent publication. What can you tell us about this book and your series in particular? If someone is starting with this series, what can they expect?
Well, you can jump into my series with any book. And that should be true of any series that you're writing, that the mystery is self-contained. It's concluded by the end of the story. There might be a personal thread that make readers want to go back to book one, but they should understand what's going on with each book if they jump in later. And so Star Tangled Murder was my latest one. That's the book that takes place at the Living History Village over 4th of July weekend. Because I thought, well, 4th of July, you have fireworks going off. Who's going to hear if there's any commotion? A great setting for a celebration that goes very wrong. And I had visited a living history village in South Florida, which was the model for this book. I was inspired by my visit there. So, this is how you can be inspired by experiences, by places that you visit or people that you meet. And it was just a lot of fun creating
Love
that
it.
story. The one I'm
Wow.
working on takes place in Central Florida since I'm now living here. And it involves somebody with a very different job, which I'd rather not talk about yet. But I'm designing the office that she works from, the colleagues that she works with, who her relatives are, her life situation, and the boyfriends maybe that she might have as she goes along. So there's a lot of creative work involved in this.
Well, I can't wait to see where you take that new series and what you do with it. Nancy, if people are just discovering you and want to dig into all the great stuff that you're up to, is there a central place online that's a good place to start to dig into all that you're up to?
They can just go to my website, which is Nancy J. Cohen, COHEN.com. But my books are available at any online bookstore. The first four are in audiobooks. That's as far as I've gotten so far. I do want to do more in that respect. But you can find me anywhere online, pretty much. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all that, those places.
Excellent. We'll link those places up to make it easy for folks to find you. Nancy, this has been so much fun chatting. Will you please come back and let's go a little deeper into writing mysteries uh, soon?
Sure.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nancy. And I'll link up those places in the show notes. And if you're interested in writing a cozy mystery, Nancy literally wrote the book, Writing the Cozy Mystery. I'll link that up as well. And thanks for joining us, folks. And Nancy, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Hank. And thanks for